What's shaking, everybody? Happy Thursday, coming at you live down in Florida. Hope everybody's having a great spring so far and surviving the war. My name's Joseph. I'm your host of EnigmaCast. I'm going to give these streams a second to sync up. We are going live right now on YouTube and we are going live right now on Rumble. And I'm still not going live at the same time on Facebook. You guys are too lazy. Come to one of these channels and watch over there. But you know, I still love you. So anyways, guys, if you've been tuning into my last couple of shows, you know, I've been talking about some fairly heavy topics, man, super heavy topics that we've been getting into, man, about the destruction of the temple, about what I think is going on with the spiritual war in Iran and these unnecessary conflicts that are going on. So tonight I've decided for my mental well-being and the fact that I'm trying to lower my blood pressure back down because I do get a little bit too hyped up. We're going to talk about something a little bit more chill, still related to the strange and mystical, still related to the scripture stuff. It's not like habit that I decided to talk about all this Bible scripture stuff, even though I'm not opposed to doing it at all. It's just that it's how it happened, man. It's how it rolls through. So I dug through the archives, man, and I've been getting a lot of questions here. Let me preference this real quick, man. First of all, let me say hi to the chats. What's going on, Robert, over there? YouTube, you're coming in strong. Got a lot of people on the viewers over there. I can see you guys watching. Don't be shy to participate. Rumble, you're always a few seconds behind. Jump on in when you're ready. So anyways, guys, the reason why I picked tonight's topic is basically going to be biblical angels and what they really are, what they really look like. The reason why I picked this topic tonight is because I've been getting a lot of questions over the last 3 weeks. And people are weighing this whole angels, demons, extraterrestrials, cryptids, hybrids, all this other stuff, right? And they're asking me, you know, basically what my opinion was, what I thought they are. What are these things? What are these creatures, right? And the more and the more I look into this and the more I study these things. And then I went back to the Bibles and the Bibles. I'm from the South, y'all. You got to forgive me. I went back to the Bible and the answer's got to be all the above, man. All of it has to be true. And I'm going to give you the reasons why based on these biblical scriptures and based on these descriptions that we have, right, to work with. And I know some of you guys watch my show and you're scared to participate in the comments. So you send me these emails, which is fine. And you don't like the Book of Enoch. You don't like these things that were taken out because you say they're non-canonical. So tonight I'm just going to use the canonicals. I'm going to reference some things as we go along with other books that were moved from the Bible, Book of Enoch, a couple of the books as we go. But you guys want to know based on what our scriptures are, I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you the reason why that angels are real, demons are real, extraterrestrials are real. Interdimensional beings are real. All these things on my wall back here, they're real. And I'm going to tell you why, right? So let's get into it. And I got to be swift because this thing is actually more notes than most of my shows as we go along, right? So, and I'm going to try to do them. I'm going to do them in rank, not necessarily in rank, but I'm going to describe them what appears to be some type of order of hierarchy -1 that we'll get to at the very end as we go along, right? So let's get into it. So based on the Bible, there's 9 different types of angels. And I'm well aware some of you are going to jump in my comments and say, hey, look, no, there's 20 different types. I'm not using anything but the Bible. I know the books you're referencing. Some of those books are basically trust me, bro sources. Some of those books are, you know, whatever. I'm just using the Bible, all right? The current Bible. Old Testament, New Testament, and I'm going to sprinkle some fun facts about the Book of Enoch as we go, right? So in the Bible, there are 9 different types of angels listed. I'm going to tell you that, and then I'm going to describe you what they are, and I'm going to tell you what they look like, what they've done, how terrifying they really are, and you can make up your own mind, right? So, Seraphim are mentioned in Isaiah 6. Second one is called a cherubim, mentioned in Genesis 3, Ezekiel 1 and 10. Now, you have an Ophanim mentioned in Ezekiel 1, right? And then in Revelations 4, you have this reference, this mysterious reference to what they call living creatures. These are angels, right? Is what they're talking to, right? You have Archangel, mentioned in Jude 1 and 9. You have angels / messengers, right? And I'm going to tell you where the term angels came from, and that might not actually be the word for these things, but that's what we use, right? And that's spread throughout the entire Bible, right? It's way too many to list. You have this reference to what they say heavenly host. Now, these are armies of angels that are listed in like Luke 2:13. You have the specific mention of watchers in Daniel 4. Now, these aren't the watchers mentioned in the Book of Enoch. These are our current watchers. I'll explain that. People don't realize that after our original watchers came down, sinned against, the earth, we'll get into that, but they were actually replaced, right? And then you have the angel of the Lord, which everybody firmly agrees that's Jesus Christ. Every time you hear the term angel of the Lord in the scriptures prior to Jesus incarnating in human flesh, that's Jesus. Or you can, I know some of you guys are still wrestling with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. That's God's avatar on earth. Just however you want to look at it, right? It doesn't matter. That's not what the night show is about, y'all. All right. Those are the 9. Let's dig into them, right? So the first one we're going to talk about is these seraphims, right? You're going to first find them, or I first found them, and you can break your Bibles out if you want, or just take notes. I first found them in Isaiah 6:1-7, right? Now, the seraphim are described as the following, right? Having 6 wings, right? 2 wings that cover their face. You can't see what they look like. 2 wings that cover their feet, right? And 2 wings used for flying, right? And these beings are associated with fire or burning light. Now, it doesn't necessarily go into their exact physical features or their looks, but it's safe to say that they're bipedal creatures, 2 legs, 2 arms, a human type body, even though you can't see their face or their feet, but they do have wings, right? And their primary role in the Bible is to stand around God's throne and proclaim, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. That's basically what their primary job is to be now, right? Now, seraphim comes from the Hebrew word meaning burning ones. So they might actually just be like these pure light beings. I don't know. You don't get that from the Bible. But other sources will try to give you a little bit more into it, but I'm not going to even reference those, right? And so they're basically guards for God, man. They guard his throne. They're guardians of sacred places and God's throne. And they're just in his presence. I don't want to necessarily call them guards. How you doing, Ash? What's going on? Thanks for hanging out tonight, brother. I did a good show with Ash. It'll be dropping in a couple of weeks, guys. We filmed it last night, so stay tuned for that. But they're basically referred to as the burning ones, and they're in God's presence, and they're just basically proclaiming his greatness, right? Not necessarily terrifying, right? Not as scary as some of the ones that we'll get into as we go, right? Now, the second one that seems to be one rank down from the seraphim are these things called cherubim, right? You'll find them in Genesis 3:24, Ezekiel 1, and Ezekiel 10. You'll find these, right? That's where I found them, but you can also, I think they're in the book of Revelations too. Now, they're described having the following features, and this is pretty scary, right? They have 4 faces: human, lion, ox, and an eagle. And they have 4 wings, 2 upper wings, 2 bottom wings, right? They have feet like a calf's hoof, right? Their bodies are covered in eyes, and they have straight legs. Hands like human hands under their wings, right? That's what these creatures are, what these cherubim are described as, right? Again, 4 faces: human, lion, ox, eagle, 4 wings, straight legs, feet like basically a calf's hoof, bodies covered in eyes, hands like a human under their wings, right? Their primary role is guardians of sacred places, and they guard God's throne. For example, the cherubim were the ones that were reportedly guarded the tree of life after Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden, right? Now follow me on this. Satan was originally a cherub, but among the cherub, he was considered a specific type of cherub, right? And if you read Ezekiel 28:14-16, it describes him as, his direct biblical description was described as specifically a guardian cherub, right? And so you see several different references of Satan having, hoofed feet, but you never really hear him described as having the four faces, the four wings, the eyes all over the place, and hands like a human hands, right? But the specific description that you'll find in the Bible of him is that he was an anointed guardian cherub. It means he was higher than the other cherubs, right? He was placed on the holy mountain. He walked among stones of fire. I don't know what that means, right? Described as a full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Had a position close to God's presence. Some say that his relationship with God had to do with music. That's why our music down here industry seems to be the primary method for evil and satanic stuff to take place, is through the music industry, right? And the key verse that you'll find him that I found interesting was Ezekiel 28:14, where it says, "You were the anointed cherub who covers, and I placed you there." Meaning of covers is that he was kind of like God's closest bodyguard or something like that, right? Because covers means to protect, guardian, right? Similar to the cherub associated with God's throne, right? Now, it's important to know that the cherubim guarded the tree of life after Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden. This could be how he had access to the garden. That's just me speculating or whatever. But after his fall, there seems to be some type of change in his appearance, right? Revelations 12:7-9 describe him as Satan leading a rebellion in heaven. We know about that. A war with Michael. We'll get to that. And the angels. Satan and his followers being cast out. So it's important to note that Satan was not originally a demon or a monster. According to Ezekiel, he was an anointed cherub, a high-ranking angel in God's court, right? Some would even say that he was like, the primary protector, one of God's consorts, right? It's also described very strangely in other passages as well. You could do a whole episode on this, his titles alone, but he's described mainly as the great dragon who was hurled down. Dragon, right? The ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. Jesus said he watched him fall like lightning from the sky. Dragon, serpent. Now, if you go and you hear one of Jesus' famous rebukes against the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? Pretty much, I think I'm saying that right. He refers to them as the sons of Satan, or Satan, your father, you vipers. Basically, he's referring to them as snakes, right? I have done several episodes where I say that, and I'll stick by this till the end, that I don't believe that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was a talking python. I don't believe that. That's how it's represented, because modern day theologians go out of their way to take the mystical aspect out of the Bible, and they purposefully, in my opinion, ignore having to explain what all these angels look like and the weirdness that goes on with it. I think he was some type of reptilian figure on 2 feet. The dragon, the serpent, something. Native American lore, all these other things talk about these reptilian beings who can shapeshift or whatever. That's my opinion, right? So, and also too, I think sometimes the Bible will speak metaphorically, right? But also sometimes too, the Bible will just flat out tell you, what's truly is. So when it says that he was cursed to, crawl on his belly like a snake, like why would he be cursed to crawl on his belly if he was already on his belly, right? That's just something weird to have, right? I think he was a reptilian, and I've done several shows about that as well. Important to know, pretty scary. The third one is the Ophanim, right? What's going on, Audacious Amber? the next one, the third one is the Ophanim, right? Ezekiel 1, 15 through 21. Now, this is a very strange one as well, right? It's basically Ezekiel 1, 15 through 21 will describe this being as wheels within wheels, covered completely in eyes, move in any direction without turning, and associated with God's throne. So basically, take circles and interlace them together, have them continually spinning and eyes all inside them. That's what this looks like, right? And their role was to move together with the cherubim and appear connected somehow to God's throne or chariot, right? Out of all the angels that were in here, these Ophanims were the strangest ones that I just couldn't understand. I can't wrap my mind around what they do or what they could, possibly be, right? All the things I described to you, the first three layers I described to you, they don't look anything like us, period, right? Nothing like us, right? Completely different, right? No halos, no just one set of wings, dressed in like, they do wear white linen. Some of the descriptions have them wearing white linen, right? But as we move into the next rank, the Archangel, right? First mentioned in Jude 1:9, Thessalonians 4 and 16. The description of these angels are high-ranking angelic leaders, commanders of heavenly armies, right? And the leader and spiritual batters and defender of God's people. Now, here's where it gets a little different, right? The only named archangel in the whole entire Bible is Michael. Matter of fact, there's only two angels mentioned in the Bible at all. That's Michael and Gabriel, right? However, are angel wings, feathers, or skin or something? It doesn't say. That's a good question. The YouTube chat, Robert's asking, are angel wings, feathers, or skin or something else? It doesn't say flat out what it is, but however, if you read Psalm 91, it talks about being under God's wings and feathers and stuff like that. So I'm just assuming in my mind they look like eagles. That's just how I'll make them up. So, but it doesn't specifically come out and say one way or the other. Now, the only archangel specifically mentioned in the Bible is Archangel Michael. Only two angels are mentioned by name in the Bible, period. Michael and Gabriel, right? However, if you move into the Book of Enoch, which some of you I know get all upset about, but so be it, you got to get upset. Enoch lists 7 archangels. I'm going to name them out right here. You have Archangel Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Raguel, Sariel, sometimes Suriel, and Remiel, right? Each one of these have different roles according to God's hierarchy, right? And God's hierarchy of angels seems to be built like an army regiment or more closely resembling a Roman legion, if I'm being honest, right? Enoch actually refers to these as the 7 archangels who stand before God, like this, his 7 generals, right? And thing, right? You have Michael, who's the protector of Israel and leader of heavenly armies. However, some theologians will tell you that when the Jews rejected Jesus Christ as their Messiah, they gave up their inheritance. And so Archangel Michael is now shifted to protecting the new covenant, the new people. I still tend to believe that he protects everyone. That's just myself, right? Gabriel, so he's basically the general of us, right? Of us, right? Gabriel is more of a messenger and announcer of important events. Raphael is referred to in the Book of Enoch as being responsible for healing and restoration. Uriel's role is for wisdom and illumination. You have Sagul, overseer of justice and harmony among angels. He's like there seems to be that sometimes these angels, well, we know that they have free will and they rebel. Sometimes they go at each other. His job is more of an overseer and to maintain harmony among these things. Sariel, sometimes referred to as Suriel, letting people think that it's 2 of them possible. He's associated with the knowledge of associated with knowledge and guidance, and Remiel is connected with the resurrection and hope. Right. So those are the 7 in Enoch. I know some of you guys don't like it. In our modern day Bible, there's only one archangel mentioned, Archangel Michael. However, Gabriel is mentioned there as well. Those are the only two named ones as well. So let me see what's going on over here. New kid. Do they blow horns when they show up? It doesn't say, man. It didn't say that as well. Pro Crane, how you doing, 11 over there? So when angels appear in the Bible, it seems, we're going to get to that in a second. There is no warning. There is no sound. They're just there. And when they show up, we're going to get into it in a second. They seem to terrify whoever sees them to the point where they become paralytic and fall down to the ground, right? So there is no verbal warning when they show up that I could find through the scriptures, right? Again, you have Michael called Archangel in Jude 1:9. Gabriel appears in Daniel and Luke, but is never called an archangel. Raphael appears in the book of Tobit, right? Which is part of the Catholic and Orthodox Deuteronical books, but not the Protestant Bible. So yeah, so if you're Catholic or Orthodox books, you're going to see the book of Tobit, and you're going to see that Raphael does appear in there, right? Now, here's an important thing about these angels, right? Archangels, the Bible does not give a physical description of archangels, unlike Seraphim, Cherubim, and Ophanim, right? It gives a very much detailed on what they look like. But scriptures never describe their exact appearance. But what we know from the Bible is archangels appear mostly human-like in their forms when they are interacting with people, right? For example, Michael in scriptures, Daniel 10-5, likely describing an angelic involved in the same encounter, is described like this. I actually think that they're describing Gabriel, but they're both the same, right? It says Gabriel appears like a man dressed in linen, or Michael, body shining like polished bronze, right? This shiny bronze, right? Face like lightning, which is basically bright white light. Eyes like flaming torches, and a voice that sounds like of multitude, right? That's the physical description that they were given to them, right? They appear humanoid only in the sense that they have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes. They have our symmetrics, right? Bronze, tan, wearing clothes. So you would assume that it was some type of, human anatomy there, right? But as far as the face and the eyes and the sound, just, supernatural all across, right? And here's another fun fact as well that kind of threw me off. I didn't know this, right? Archangels are not described as multi-winged creatures at all. In fact, they're not described as having wings, period. There's no halo. There's no wings described on these archangels at all. And I always, picture them as, Michael, wings with swords, stuff like that. That's not how the Bible describes them. If they do have wings, they left that detail out, right? So we'll see one day down the road, right? So the next type of angel we encounter, right, is the more common type of angels that are referred to specifically as messenger angels, right? They're all through the Bible. And the word in Hebrew is malak, right? I'm working on my Hebrew here. And basically it means messenger, ambassador, one sent with a message, right? In the Old Testament, the word malak can also refer to as a human messenger, which is important to note, a divine messenger. So it covers a lot. So sometimes it leaves a little bit of ambiguity in there, but when you read them in the whole context, it seems to be that it's a angelic messenger or some type of supernatural messenger, not just a random dude showing up being called a messenger, right? Perfect example is Genesis 19. The angels who visit Lot are called Malikim, right? Plural, so multiple messengers, right? But when you move into the New Testament, the word translate from Malak to Greek translates to angelos, right? And then that means messenger or envoy. And then it translates from angelos to angel in English. So that's where we get the term angels all over the place. And so when I look back on the translations, if that held true, then it would say that basically an arch messenger was what this was called. So archangels might not be the exact same translation, but again, it's only mentioned one time in the Bible as an archangel, right? So, and again, these always usually appear in human form. And in fact, they're indistinguishable as humans at first, and they don't seem to scare people when they show up. It's like, hey, we're a messenger here, we're doing this. Sometimes they appear radiant, sometimes they appear glowing, but most of the time, they just look like us, right? Examples, of some of these, examples of some messenger stuff was Gabriel announcing Jesus' birth, angels visiting Abraham, angels at Jesus' tomb, right? That type of stuff. Now here's the last one, right? The last one, heavenly host, right? This is a singular pronunciation, heavenly host. Sources Luke 2 through 13, Kings 22, right? And basically, it's just describing the foot soldiers, for lack of a better word, or large armies of angels is basically how it's just described it, right? Their role is basically to serve God and carry out his commands. So they're just basically the 9-to-5ers, the normal angels up there, right? For example, at Jesus' birth, a multitude of heavenly hosts appeared praising God. That was Daniel 4:13. Oh, I'm sorry. That was at Jesus' birth, right? Now you have it below them. You have a watcher class of angels. Now these are the exact same type of angels that rebelled in Genesis, came down, found earth women attractive, mated with them, created the giants, basically left their post, sinned against all forms of nature. But there's more than just those 200. So those 200 were replaced by these watchers, right? Holy watchers, right? Because remember, these watchers that rebelled, Archangel Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and I think Raphael came down, rounded them up, and they're all chained in the bottom, waiting for the day of judgment, right? Now, they're described as holy watchers, angelic beings observing human events, right? Their role is to carry out divine judgment and watch over earthly affairs. And again, don't confuse these with the original 200. They're gone. In fact, we don't know exactly how many watchers the earth has. We just know that of the original batch, 200 of them left, right? So, and they look like men. It doesn't describe them as having wings at all. Nothing whatsoever. They look straight up like men as well, right? Matter of fact, it appears that most of the angels look like us, except when you get into the higher ranking angels, they seem to start to differ, right? Just from what I was reading, except for the last one here, right? The last one mentioned in the Bible, number 9, is angel of the Lord. Genesis, Exodus, Judges, all through there, right? Description as a messenger of God, speaks with authority of God, sometimes identified with God himself. Examples are, he appeared to Moses in the burning bush, appears to Hagar in the wilderness, appears to Gideon. But every theologian, you'll be hard pressed to find a theologian that doesn't say that this is Jesus in human form, right? Now remember, a lot of people get this mixed up or don't really follow it through. They argue about what Jesus looks like, but if you read the Bible, he takes on so many different forms. Even after his resurrection, he would appear to people. They wouldn't recognize him until he made himself known. Same way he would come down and he would, anytime you hear take off your shoes, you're standing on holy ground. That's Jesus in the flesh, right? So, because remember, Jesus is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. Very front of the book. Jesus has been here the whole entire time, right? So, those are your 9 types. Now I'm telling you why you need to be scared of them, right? The whole thing about angels wearing baby diapers with little bows and little flapping wings, that is 100% made up in the freaking Renaissance era that was put on paintings and stuff like that as well. And these beings are no joke. And they are not to be trifled with. And when they always see their task through, and I hate to say it, man, they're lethal, right? And again, I'm going to lead this back to people, when I first let off this statement about, what I thought angels and demons and extraterrestrials. Just by the description of these beings alone, we know that in God's kingdom, right next to him, are creatures that don't look like us at all, right? just like these creatures back here don't look like us at all, right? And we'll get to that more towards the notes as I get down here. But what you have every time an angel shows up in the Bible, almost every time, let me not be too bombastic here, right? When angels appear in the Bible, people are almost always terrified with these beings. Always. Which is why the first thing that you often hear is they'll say, do not be afraid. That's the first thing they said. The Bible mentions do not be afraid 365 times in total, right? One, do not be afraid for every day of the year, right? But what this leads people to believe is that, and I concur with this, is that these encounters are so overwhelming or frightening. Even when the angel appears in human forms, it breaks what the person sees, right? And again, they don't slowly show up. They're just there. Boom, they're there, right? And so I quickly jotted down like, 7 examples of this, right? So and there's probably more in the Bible, but I just had 7 right here. The phrase "do not be afraid" or "fear not" is said by angels around 8 or 10 times, right, in the Bible. Luke 1:13, angel Gabriel appears before Zechariah. Do not be afraid, Zechariah, your prayer has been heard. But he almost killed the guy when he showed up, right? Luke, a fright, obviously. Luke 1:30, Gabriel, shows up to Mary, tells her, do not be afraid. Mary, you have found favor with God, right? Don't be scared, right? Matthew 1:20, angel shows up to Joseph in a dream saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. He shows up, right? Luke 2:10, angels announcing the birth of Jesus' birth to shepherds. Do not be afraid. They just showed up in the sky. I bring you good news of great joy. Matthew 28:5, angels at Jesus' tomb. Do not be afraid, for I know you are looking for Jesus. He's talking to Mary, right? Daniel 10:12, angel speaking to Daniel. That's Gabriel. Do not be afraid. Again, Daniel 10:19, angels, and again speaking to Daniel. Do not be afraid. You are highly esteemed. And this is important to notice because Daniel was one of God's primary prophets. In fact, in the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Bible are the Jewish Torah. They reject the book of Daniel because the book of Daniel actually accurately predicts the birth of Jesus Christ, right? But they reject that book altogether. Even though he's an Old Testament, he's the only Old Testament book not in the Torah, right? But he was one of God's primary prophets. And even with his direct connection with God, when Gabriel showed up twice, it freaked him out. It scared him to death. He even fell down. And Gabriel's like, no, get up. It's okay. Don't be afraid, right? And so also, when you go into Judges 6:23, you have one of what's called the Lord's messenger. It doesn't say who it is. Speaking to Gideon, peace, do not be afraid. You're not going to die, is what he tells him, right? And then Genesis 21:17, you have an angel speaking to Hagar saying, do not be afraid. So we know that their physical appearance, even in human form, is something massive, right? And I actually think that in their human form, even though they resemble us, I've been doing some studies or read some things that where Adam and Eve were about 10 feet tall, right? And so I think that not only these beings showing up in their stature of the shining ones that they were, the face looked like lightning, eyes burning red, voice just booming. I think they were also just physically just massively big, right? That's just my personal takeaway on that. They probably have that locked away in the Vatican somewhere, but how big they really were. But that's a good thought, that they were bigger and that they are, humanoid shape, but they're actually terrifying when they come in here, right? Now, that right there is the angels being nice, being the angels showing up, being the angels telling you, hey, look, don't be afraid. I'm here with a message, right? You're going to be okay. God's doing this. God's doing that. Right, let me check the chat over here real quick. I see it banging around here. Yes, an angel escorted Adam and Eve out of the garden. Yeah, I didn't read that anywhere, but it makes perfect sense, right? Again, you got to remember, Eve was cast out of the garden, but Adam chose to leave, right? So how they went back, right? Now, anyways, now getting back to this. The angels that we were talked about, we gave you the descriptions, and I gave you the nice versions of these things, right? How they would show up and deliver, messages. But they are also incredibly lethal beings, 100%, not to be messed with, right? Not to be messed with. And I'm going to give you some example right here, man. When angels were sent to the earth or ordered by God to, enact divine judgment or whatever, they did not hesitate and they showed zero mercy. And I'm going to give you just a few examples of some of the more terrifying events that angels have in the Bible. For example, in 2 Kings 19, one angel killed 185,000 Assyrians in one night. One night, right? 2 Samuel 24, an angel kills 70,000 Israelites. 70,000, right? I'm going to get into some details on why, right? In Exodus 12, you have the destroyer kills every firstborn Egyptian son and would have killed anybody else's son if they hadn't had the lamb's blood above their doorway, right? And so that number was really, no one really knows that number, to be honest with you. And then you have Acts 12, where an angel on the spot strikes Herod dead instantly for blasphemy, right? And then in Genesis 19, you have angels that were involved in Sodom and Gomorrah's judgment. Now, a lot of people will tell you that God was on the earth. God came to witness the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah firsthand on earth, while angels were in Sodom to do it, right? These looked like these men that were walking in Sodom were so beautiful and so handsome, and they looked like men, that the men in Sodom wanted to have sex with them, right? Because Sodom was fully sexually immorality, sexually depraved, and it was, it says strange flesh is in there as well, right? I think they were cannibalistic, and I also think that maybe they might have been having sex with things like this that were back here on the wall as well. But God was so angry with them that he came down to oversee the destruction himself. And again, it makes you when people go back and they see, when you take what's going on currently with Island Boys emails and all the stuff that's going on and how they literally have started a war to prevent this from coming out, they're doing the exact same things in those emails that they were doing back in the day. And people, when you read, I'm guilty of this myself, I would read the Old Testament like, yo, this man, God he had no chill, man. Like, wow, he was super hard. And then you read the Bible and like, oh, they were sacrificing kids to devils. Oh, they were eating kids. Oh, well, of course. Well, then there you go. That's why. And of course, it makes sense now. If you want to understand the God of the Old Testament and why he wilded out like that, go read some of these emails that are coming out. They were using Gmail. I don't get me started, man. This is supposed to be my calm down moment here. But the people in those emails had so little fear of getting caught that they were using Gmail accounts to plot and do this type of stuff. Crazy, right? And then Ezekiel 9, you have angels execute the judgment in Ezekiel's vision. And I'm going to go in that in a little bit more detail as we go along, right? But these angels, they're not for the weak. They are not these, peaceful, merciful things that we are led to believe as children, right? Where if you die and you go to heaven, you get your wings, you do all this other stuff, right? You play harps. That's not how it is. In fact, they're often referred to as regiments and legions in there. There's a full-on military hierarchy within these angels, right? And we know these angels have free will because they rebel. And we know that angels go to war with each other because Archangel Michael and Satan fought, right? And there's some evidence, again, it's not in our Bible, there's some evidence that during that battle, Satan lost an eye. And that's why all these celebrities do this with their eye, because Satan has one eye, right? Because, during the fight with Archangel Michael, he lost it. But I can't find any hard, concrete evidence to prove that. But when you go and look at Norse mythology, and it talks about Odin, who I think is Satan, I do believe that, right? That Odin was actually Satan in human form. He's referred to as Odin the Wise, Odin One Eye, right? So anyways, that's off topic. That's more Nordic mythology, which I am going to do a show on that, talking about how all the books of the Bible and angels and all this other stuff reference into, Norse mythology, Celtic mythology, stuff like that. It's actually pretty interesting. But here's examples of these angels being directly responsible in destroying and just mass wiping people off the planet, right? The angel that killed the Assyrian army in 2 Kings 19:35, also referenced in Isaiah 37 and 36. One angel came down and in one night wiped out 185,000 Syrian soldiers, right? And it says, the night the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in a Syrian camp. Now, we talked about what the angel of the Lord is, right? Jesus. If you follow what I just told you, that a lot of people believe that the angel of the Lord, when referenced in the Bible, is Jesus. And it's one, says right here in 2 Kings 19-35 and Isaiah 37, 36, that night, the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 Assyrians in camp. That's Jesus. So I'm telling you guys right now, if you think that Jesus is all hugs and smiles and the lamb, you're wrong. This is also the lion. He was also the one who appeared before Jacob and said, go into this city in Jericho and kill everything. Man, woman, child, dogs, and donkeys. Go look it up. And do not take anything from this city. Everything in this city is accursed, but leave nothing standing, right? Angel of the Lord. So you guys better get it together with your Jesus, because literally Jesus even says, there's a passage in there where Jesus says, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring the sword, to divide father against son, mother against daughter, husband against wife. Our preachers are failing us, because all they want to talk about in church is Exodus, how hard the Jews had it, and the 7 plagues and all this other stuff, and how Jesus is forgiven. They don't want to tell you he flipped over tables. They don't want to tell you that he cursed out the Sadducees and the Pharisees. They don't want to tell you that in the Old Testament he killed 185,000 people in one night. They don't want to tell you that. But he did, because they want you to think that, oh, you're going to get raptured out of here. Pray for the Antichrist to show up so everybody can go to heaven early. Freaking nonsense, right? Nonsense. Second thing around that as well. The angel that killed during David's census, 2 Samuel 24, 15 through 17, and Chronicles 1, 21, 14 through 16. In there, you have what said David orders a census against God's will, and an angel brings judgment. He was not supposed to do a census. God told him not to. He did it anyways. And what was his punishment? So the Lord sent a plague on Israel, and 70,000 people died, right? And it says by an angel, right? And the reason why it says David later sees the angel standing with a drawn sword over Jerusalem. He sees it. And that was for disobeying. So that's 70,000 gone, right? Now, the destroying angel during the Passover, Exodus 12:23. We all know this the story, right? The destroyer, creeping death, whatever you want to call it, was one of the punishments on the pharaohs for not letting people go. You were supposed to sacrifice a lamb, eat the whole entire thing, put the blood over your door sill, and that's the Passover, right? Every firstborn Egyptian was killed. In the cradle, or 100 years old, they died, right? No mercy on the cross, right? The text refers to the destroyer as acting under God's command, which we already know that's true, right? So children aren't spared. Women aren't spared. If God gives the order to go, they go. The angel who struck down Herod in Acts 12:23. Now, King Herod was basically trying to be accepted being worshipped as a god. And when he did accept that, praise upon himself, right? The angel struck him dead right on the spot, man. And it says that God let him be eaten by worms. And so I don't know. That was pretty. It says he was eaten by worms and died. So I don't know if God put the worms in him first and he died or whatever, but still, he immediately was judged and destroyed right there on the spot. The angel that destroys Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19. 2 angels go in and get Lot and his family out of there, right? This is another famous story, right? And then they rain pure brimstone down on Sodom. But they don't tell you the exact same time this is going on. They're doing the exact same thing to Gomorrah, right? The text says the Lord rained down fire, but angels were involved in the event and the judgment, right? So boom, 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 boom. You got that, right? Now, before I move into Ezekiel, we also know that these angels have free will because you have the watchers who rebel. We know that they're sexually compatible with our women, human species. The Bible says that we are made in their image, but slightly lower. So we know that we have some type of connection with these guys. But we also know that if you read the Bible towards the end, it talks about how this body is for earth. And when we move on to the next body or the, new heaven, new earth, we all get new bodies, heavenly bodies like the angels, right? We also know that they have their own personalities. They have pride because you have Satan, who his pride caused his downfall. We also know that they harbor hate. We also know they harbor love. They appear to have our entire range of emotions. I don't get where people say that angels don't have sex. I don't understand that when it specifically, we wouldn't have these Nephilim and all this other stuff if the angels didn't come down here and take wives and go into them. It's what it says in Genesis. So I don't understand that, right? Also, too, I can't find any, not in our Bible, I couldn't find any reference to female angels. They seem to all appear to be male. In our Bible it is, and I know that there's some other, again, text that I'm not using as reference that reference female angels, but we know that 200 angels left their post, came down here, took earthly women, sons of, man, and had sex with them. So they seem to be able to do everything that we do, and they seem to be vulnerable to all the things that we're vulnerable to: pride, lust, anger, fear, killing, whatever, right? They seem to have that whole range of emotions as well, right? And if you know anything about human emotions, you know that human emotions, especially in men, I tell my sons this, right? And I also tell young men that I mentor, right? A man who can't control his emotions is a dangerous man, and it takes other men to keep that man in check. Classic example is that back in the day, they used to have these, what they call the heat of passion murders, where a guy would just lose it on his wife and he would just, unalive her, right? And it was the heat of a passion. She was having an affair or whatever. And that used to be back in the day a necessary, like a defense to get people out of jail, right? But these are also the guys who can't control their emotion. They're also the guys that end up stalking women, right? Hitting women, right? Freaking out and just acting crazy in public, right? And again, it takes other men to control these men. And when I was in the military, I've talked about this before. You take 10 guys and one of them's a sociopath. The other 9 will sort him out. No problems. You won't have any problems from that guy, right? Because the other 9 are not going to have it. You take the other 9 away, this guy's a menace. So now these angelic beings, if they're given over to the same desires and temptations and the same struggles that we have, lust seems to be a thing that was, caused the watchers to fall. But lust is also a man's greatest downfall. I can't speak for women, so women in the comments, let me know. I don't think lust is a woman's primary downfall, but for men it is. And I'll tell you, it's not always sexual lust. Normally it is, but it's also lust for power, lust for recognition, lust for, the next greatest thing, right? You can lust for more than the flesh, right? And so that makes them, when they go bad, appear to be even more dangerous than, before. And again, it took God or other angels to sort these other bad angels out. We were no match for them, period. Sorry, it wasn't, right? So the whole harp with wings and the whole, floating on clouds, not it, man. These things are more like, just more like us, but just with greater power, right? Now, right here was, again, the final example that I got for you is about Ezekiel had a vision in Ezekiel 9:5-7, where angelic executioners are sent to judge Jerusalem, right? Now, this is one of the most damning passages in the Bible. And I'm bringing it up right now because it actually plays into what's going on right now around the world. He describes them as angelic executioners are sent to judge Jerusalem. And the people in the vision are killed mercilessly, right? And in fact, God shows Ezekiel 6 angel executioners moving into Israel. And a lot of people will say this was the first fall, the first temple destruction is what I'll put on there, right? Before the killings happened, though, God sent another angel into Jerusalem, and he says, mark the faithful with, marks on their foreheads, right? And God tells the angel, go throughout the city of Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over the detestable things done in it. Anyone with the mark will be spared. The angels of judgment, Ezekiel sees 6 beings coming from the north gate, each holding a deadly weapon. Doesn't describe what the weapon is, but it's important that we understand they had weapons, right? So it seems to be that, when you hear describing them using swords or something like that, that's what they had, right? They basically went through the entire city. They struck down anyone that wasn't marked. Man, woman, child, dog, whatever, right? They slaughtered old men, young men and women, mothers and children, but did not touch anyone who had the mark. They are instructed to begin at the temple itself. Now, what was going on in that temple? Everything that was going on in those emails. Molech, Baal worship, male prostitution. Again, you got to understand, man, that you see some of these people participating. Homosexuality is not their flavor of sex. It's them being detestable. It's part of their religion. If you look into, I'm not encouraging you to do this. If you look into satanic stuff like that, it's not about necessarily about them, having that affinity. Perfect example is one of the most nastiest people you ever read about is this guy named Aleister Crowley, right? He was a famous satanic person, right? He performed homosexual acts as a sin on purpose because he felt it gave him power with black magic, right? He wasn't gay, but he would do these homosexual things, right? And so all this was going on at the time, right? Cannibalism, all this stuff was going on. So God sends in there and wipes them all out. He sends these 6 angels in there to do it. And right on their heels, right? Right on their heels, Nebuchadnezzar shows up, right? So some people will argue that no, these angels didn't do it. I'm saying they did do it. But what happened is that when Nebuchadnezzar showed up right after them and invaded Jerusalem, he took the ones that were marked, which leads into the chapter of Daniel, back to Babylon with them, right? The city was destroyed. The temple was burned, totally destroyed the time. Thousands of people were killed. Many survivors were taken into exile to Babylon, right? So I tend to believe the scripture that the angels went in first, did all that stuff, started in the temple, wiped everybody out right at the exact same time, almost instantly or right behind it. Nebuchadnezzar shows up, goes in behind them, takes Israel away into captivity and destroys it. And again, if you go back 2 episodes and watch my show about the temple being, destroyed in 70 AD, the temple in 70 AD was destroyed on the exact same day as the first temple was. And that just shows you how God had enough, again, the exact same day, right? And that's why I talk about how it blew a hole in the psyche of modern day Judaism. In fact, a lot of people are talking about this as well. And you've heard me go on and on about this as well. Judaism is a dead religion. And the reason why Judaism is a dead religion is because they don't have a temple to sacrifice their gods to it. They still adhere to the law or whatever, but they can't atone for their sins. So some people say, oh, no, it's not a dead religion. It's an incomplete religion. There's no such thing as an incomplete religion, right? It's dead. It's just completely dead, right? And the reason why is because the law of Moses was fulfilled with Jesus. They rejected that, basically rejecting their inheritance, right? And so that's where the parable of the vineyard, where they talk about, he builds a vineyard, keeps sending people back to get it, and they keep killing him. He sends his son, they kill his son. So God shows up, or the owner shows up, kills the people that were in charge of the vineyard and gives the vineyard to somebody else. They rejected their inheritance, and then the inheritance were given over to the Christians through Jesus Christ, right? So Judaism is a dead religion. There will never be the construction of the third temple, but we've already talked about it as well. But it's actually picking up a lot of steam, and people are also getting behind it, right? And I know that some of you want to talk about the Ezekiel's visions, where he's talking about, you'll see the abomination of desolation, in the temple. Well, that's the Catholic. That's Catholic. He's seeing the Catholic Church, and I'll tell you why. There's only about 10 million Jews on the planet, and again, Satan already has them. The synagogue of Satan is what they refer to, in the book of Revelations twice, right? So there's no need for him to build a third temple and put that in there, right? So what you're seeing is the world's biggest religion is the Catholic flavor of Christianity, right? So when he's seeing that desolation of abomination, it'll be something that's in Rome, right? And if you go in there and you read again about the 7 hills or whatever, a lot of people think that Rome is going to come into a play. But all this other stuff right here, man, you don't worry about what's going on in Iran or whatever, or Jerusalem. That third temple is never going to be built, right? And a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people are going on to say the same thing as well to go do it. Now, but we've already talked about in past episodes. Go into EnigmaCast and check it out if you want to, or whatever. But that right there, everybody, is the biblical versions of angels that we have to go with, right? And these angels are no joke. In fact, the Bible is almost a rated R movie when you read it. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the Bible, man. Sex, murder, death, betrayal, violence, child sacrifice, all this crazy stuff is going on in the Bible, right? It's not for the weak, right? And angels are definitely not these, I do believe that some of them take on that role, but a majority of these angels are fierce warrior type beings, right? But I'm sure there's also comforting angels in there. Classic example is when Mary goes to the tomb, there's an angel just chilling there saying, hey, Jesus is gone, he's not here. She was a little scared. He's like, don't be afraid. He just looked like a normal dude, glowing dude, sitting on the rock, I think it was glowing white, just looking like a normal guy, right? And she ran away, right? So that's where that is at right there with the angels. Again, I know some of you are asking about the female angels. I'm aware of those. Not in the Bible, so not making this show. Maybe down the road I will do a appendix version of these angels, because there is a lot of angel reference out there, and there is a lot of people who study a lot of angels as well. Now, bringing this full circle back to when I was talking to you guys a little bit as well about people asking me, what do I think about all this strange stuff? Angels or demons, extraterrestrials, cryptids. The answer, y'all, is yes. Based on my biblical study, all of the above, they all exist. Angels are real. Demons are real. Fallen angels came to earth, had sex with our women, created giants. That was real. Angels came down, wrapped those angels up, put them in chains. They're being held to judgment. That was real. Archangel Satan rebelled, tried to overtake the throne. 1/3 of the angels got thrown down with him in a war. They fought. That happened. All this stuff back here on the wall, they're real. They're growing them. They're making them. People are seeing them. Sightings are going all over the place. Things are happening up, right? They're real. Aliens and extraterrestrials. All right. I don't know if I'm streaming or I think I lost my stream there for a second, guys. I'm sorry about that. But if you're still with me, I'll edit this out and fix it, man. So 6 Tim Burchett talks about 6 or 7 ancient societies have, aliens living inside the oceans, right? We know that's real, right? Could aliens be pretending to be demons, pretending to be aliens? Absolutely. Can't rule it out, man. But my honest to God opinion and the way I feel about all this stuff is that all this stuff is real. All of it happened. And man, and that's just really my honest opinion on it, guys. I can't even make it. I can't lean. I mean, I've tried to lean one way. I tried to lean the other, but this is what it is, guys. So that's tonight's show, guys. I got a little bit of information for you before I roll out of here. I'm going to give you guys a heads up that there will be no show next week. I'm actually leaving on Sunday to head to South America. I've been invited to participate in a cryptid research event down in Costa Rica. I've been reached out to. And so I am packing up my bags and I'm heading down that way. And I will be down there for about 9 or 10 days, right? And I will be renting a Jeep. I've already got that lined up in place. And in that Jeep, I have asked them to install a satellite router. So I'll be able to connect my phone and connect my equipment, right? So I'll try to be doing updates on the fly. If not, I'll see you guys when I get back, right? And if I'm not back in a week, you know how we do. Gotta wait a little bit longer, all right, guys? Right? So anyways, I'm working on my exits here. We're about 2 minutes overdue, right? So anyways, guys, if this is the first time you find me, I'm Joseph, host of the EnigmaCast on the Ancient Enigma Files. Please do me a favor. Please consider giving me a subscribe or giving me a thumbs up. And if you didn't like my format, you didn't like my topic, it's okay. Give me a thumbs down and just let me know the reasons why in the comments, right? You can find EnigmaCast on every single major streaming platform on the planet, from iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Spreaker, whatever, your little Alexa dot. I'm very blessed with God. I'm the only EnigmaCast out there. Go in there and just say play EnigmaCast and I'll pop up. Sorry about that little technical glitch. I don't know why. I guess we got a little bit too close to target or whatever, and the powers that be tried to knock our internet down there for a second, but it seemed that the stream clicked up. Guys, I'm sorry on the chat, man. I didn't get a chance. One quick one. I'm trying to learn all I can. A serious question. If angels came down and procreated with us humans, does that mean they shared human DNA in order to be possible? Wendy from Stockton, 906. I hope you're still here. Yes. If they're sexually compatible with women, there has to be some type of DNA that's compatible with us. So they're not pure DNA strands, obviously, because we know that the Nephilim came out and they were giants and they were just all kinds of, bad news for everybody. However, they were able to impregnate our women. So that means that, yes, they must somehow be somewhat sexually compatible with us for that to happen. So sorry, man, the chat broke when I was going in. Sorry about that, guys. Anyways, guys, thanks for hanging out, man. Thanks for hanging out. And again, I will see you guys in a few weeks, and I'll keep you posted along the way. And we're out.
Subscribe now and turn on notifications to join us on this extraordinary journey into the unknown.